Got a question from a neurotypical wife, and she states that my husband has ASD level 1 and he has some emotions blindness or alexithymia. Can he feel love? The answer is yes. It's going to be harder for him to find the words to describe how he feels, and it's going to be easier for people with ASD to show love through actions, in other words, doing things for you. But alexithymia, even though it effectively isolates a person with ASD emotionally, it does not prevent him from feeling and showing love. If you're married to somebody with autism, you're married to somebody who has a disorder. Yes, it's a disorder. It's not a condition or a different way of thinking, okay? If you had a child with a disorder, would you treat that child the same way you do your autistic spouse? Huh? Would you? Quick message to neurotypical spouses out there. If you're married to someone with autism, think of his meltdowns as the fight part of the fight or flight response, and think of his shutdowns as the flight part of the fight or flight response. In other words, your autistic spouse is trying to protect himself from real or imagined harm. Quick message to neurotypical spouses out there. If you were married to, let's say, a husband that was legally blind, would you ever say to him, you know, if you would just try harder and work at it, you'd be able to see better? No, you would not. So if your spouse has mind blindness and emotions blindness, what makes you think that if they tried harder or worked at it, that they would be able to see someday? What is the number one problem for people with autism spectrum disorder? Anxiety. What is their number one source of anxiety? Trying to relate to people. How does your ASD husband show his love for you? By doing things for you. And the typical NT wife says, well, yeah, I like some of the things that he does for me, but that's not enough. And the ASD husband will say the same thing. Doesn't matter what I do, it's never good enough. And so the NT wife goes through life feeling deprived. The ASD husband goes through life feeling like, I can never make her happy. Quick message to neurodiverse couples. If your spouse has to behave in accordance with your expectations, you're in for one long, miserable marriage. What's normal for a neurodiverse marriage? It's normal for the NT wife to be stressed because she's not getting her emotional needs met. It's normal for the ASD spouse to be stressed because he has a hard time meeting her emotional needs and keeps getting in trouble for not meeting her needs. What's normal is for the NT wife to be mad because he's not following through. What's normal is for the ASD spouse to be mad because he keeps getting asked to do things he doesn't want to do. What's normal? For the NT wife to be sad that she didn't get the marriage that she thought she was signing up for. And it's also normal for the ASD spouse to be sad because he's not getting the marriage that he thought he signed up for. Hey, quick message to neurotypical spouses. You think your autistic spouse doesn't have empathy? No, he does. He just doesn't have displayed empathy. It's in there. He just doesn't show it because sometimes emotions are uncomfortable for him. People on the autism spectrum are either reacting to unpredictability in their life or they're trying to avoid unpredictability. Let me explain this. A lot of what goes on in people with autism spectrum disorder has to do with predictability or the lack thereof. So on the one hand, they're either reacting to unpredictability in their life, or on the other hand, they're working real hard to try to establish predictability. So we'll call it the predictability quotient, just like an IQ, except now we have a PQ. And so if I have mind blindness, alexithymia, executive function deficits, sensory sensitivities, and anxiety, which those four will create the fifth one, which is anxiety, I have a lot of unpredictability in my life. I don't understand people. I don't understand their opinions. I don't understand their feelings. I don't understand their motives. I'm in the dark a lot, trying to fill in the blanks with as much sense as I can come up with, dodging paintballs all day. That's a lot of unpredictability, which creates a lot of anxiety. So as a result, I want to create as much predictability as possible. How do I do that? I have a lot of routines, rules. I have my own structure that I follow. I don't like change, I don't like surprises, and I don't like trying to deal with complex social and emotional interactions. Guess who that would be? That would be my neurotypical spouse, because as far as social and emotional intricacies go, she is definitely the most complex. So that's why she's the one that I tend to have the most problem with. So this is a bit of an oversimplification on one hand, but on the other hand, not much You think of it as a dualistic thing here. People on the autism spectrum are either reacting to the replete unpredictability in their life, and that could be in the form of a shutdown or a meltdown, or they're trying to avoid unpredictability in their life. That could be a shutdown or a meltdown too. But with avoiding unpredictability, what you see most often is they are very absorbed for lengthy periods of time with their special interest. And oftentimes that involves their employment, if they enjoy their job. So in summary, mind blindness, emotions blindness, executive function deficits, sensory sensitivities, weak central coherence, all create anxiety and unpredictability in my life. And some of the behaviors that others may witness, if I have those traits, are going to appear as if I am selfish, insensitive, uncaring, narcissistic, sociopathic, and so on. I'm going to also, if I have those traits, try to establish as much predictability as possible. Therefore, I'm going to have a lot of routine and structure and rules. I'm going to be very rigid in my thinking, and the world will perceive me as being one-track mind, stubborn, self-absorbed, insensitive, uncaring, narcissistic, selfish, and so on. So that's the plight of the person on the autism spectrum, constantly in the state of being misunderstood and having malicious motives assigned to their behavior.
All 5 of them cannot be emergent. And if anybody says, oh no, at the end of the day, if we have 5, they're all emergent. No, not buying it. So of the 5, you're going to pick the 1 or 2 that are emergent. In other words, we really need to come to some kind of consensus tonight on this thing. The ones that are not emergent, which I'm guessing in some cases would be all 5, you're still going to pick 1. So you're not going to try to fight 5 battles at once. That's disaster. Again, if at any point you're going to try to tackle 5 things at once, just go get some gas, sprinkle it around the house, and start throwing lit matches at it. If you have 5 things and they're all emergent by the end of the day, I think you're in the wrong business. Now, if you're a brain surgeon or you're in the middle of a flight to the moon, I could see having 5 emergent problems. Other than that, I don't even see why there would be 5 emergent problems.
Fighting multiple battles is making you physically and mentally sick. I run into all the time, really, neurodiverse couples who fight every battle that comes down the pike. Neurodiverse couples are notorious for just piling a bunch of disputes on the table without categorizing, prioritizing. They won't talk about how sex isn't good, the money problems, kid problems, quality time or lack thereof, chores are not getting done, or somebody feels like they're doing all the chores, and pet peeves, dirty dishes, the in-laws, and the list just goes on. And they're both just chasing their tails, quite honestly. And the problem with that is, if you are not judicious about which battles to fight and you just fight everything, then you become toxic to one another. And you get the 2 of you in the same room, and it almost always ends up in some kind of a debate or argument or fight, etc. The problem with this is people who fight every battle that comes down the pike also are in a lot of emotional pain. Chronic, low-grade emotional pain is what I call it. And those who are in chronic, low-grade emotional pain tend to perceive slights and disrespect where there is none. And if they are always on the alert for any sign of disrespect or lack of cooperation or a personal insult or being controlled by the other person, etc., they're going to be much more willing to continue to fight every battle that comes down the pike. So over time, they're fighting more and more battles, thus increasing the emotional pain, and you're in this cycle. So obviously, you would want to do the opposite of that. And my suggestion would be to pick the top 3 issues that you want to resolve. I'm not saying don't fight any battles, and I am saying you want to do fair fighting, but you don't want to fight every battle that comes down the pike. And so I would say pick 3. Just for starters, pick 3, but don't fight all 3 at one time. So brainstorm about the most important issues. Keep it to 3 just for now. Try to have some dialogue on one of those 3. And then when you get some resolve on one of those, then you can move on to the second one. Then you can move on to the third one. All others are not fair game for one damn comment. Let me repeat that. Anything outside of those top three is not fair game for debate, argument, discussion, etc. Pick your battles carefully. And if you choose to fight every battle that comes down the pike, you are choosing mental illness and physical illness. And if you're getting sick by fighting too many battles at once, hasn't manifested in mental health issues or physical health issues yet, give it a few years, and then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Hey guys, this is Mark Hutton with AdultAsperger'sChat.com. And one of the things that I run into a lot with couples where one is affected by Asperger's syndrome and the other partner or spouse is a neurotypical is the neurotypical spouse understands that her Asperger's husband, for example, is hardwired in a certain way and that he does have a developmental disorder. And then she's wondering, okay, well, given that he has these challenges or deficits, how are we ever going to communicate? How is he ever going to understand how I feel or meet my emotional needs? Well, your first line of defense is obviously to go get counseling from a marriage and family therapist who has experience with autism spectrum disorders. I run into so many situations where they have sought counseling from a neurotypical therapist who offers neurotypical advice, which is going to result in, one of the parties, since they're not wired neurotypically, one of the parties are totally not going to understand, how to follow through with this plan because it's not in alignment with how they think. So the first thing to do is get with somebody who knows what they're talking about with respect to being sensitive to the partner with Asperger's syndrome, specifically the mind blindness issues, alexithymia, sensory sensitivities, executive function deficits, and so on. It would be a whole lot easier and a lot less painful to just go beat your head against a brick wall than to seek neurotypical advice from a neurotypical therapist and start employing neurotypical strategies in your marriage. If you've tried it, you know it doesn't work, okay? So there's so many things that can be done. I just want to mention two in this video here. One of the first lines of defense is when you are going to have a heavy-handed conversation with your Asperger's husband, you want to give him a heads up that there is going to be a conversation that might be a little stressful. So you don't hit him with a surprise, because people with Asperger's, they don't like change and they don't like surprises. The next thing you want to do when both of you, when you come into this heavy-handed conversation that has the potential for stress and anxiety that can result in a fight, you want to view yourselves as team players. More specifically, you want to come into this conversation that has the potential for a meltdown or a shutdown or however it ends badly. You want to come into that conversation with the mindset of, we're going to pretend as if we're business partners. You are a team player. If you were on a professional football team, you wouldn't treat one of your team players the way you do your spouse. If you were the co-owner of a business, you wouldn't treat your business partner the same way you treat your spouse. So you want to view any heavy-handed conversations, especially when it has something to do with finances or the kids, you want to come in with the mindset that we're dealing with this like it's a business, and your family is a business in a sense. The other thing that I want to mention in this short video is when you do have to have this heavy-handed conversation that has the potential for disaster, I find it very helpful to have a brisk walk while you're having the conversation, because I have found that when people are having a stressful conversation, their breathing becomes very shallow, and in some cases they stop breathing altogether, which just reinforces the brain's perception that there's really a threat at hand. So when you have a brisk walk, you're forced to breathe while you're talking. And there's something about breath work while you're having discussion that tends to keep things a little more on the even keel. You could think of it like this. You can't talk and take a drink of water at the same time. They're incompatible. And similarly, it's hard to have a really knockdown, drag-out fight when you're breathing fairly heavy. So something about oxygenating the brain does help bring the anxiety down to a more tolerable level where you still have a semblance of a rational brain as you're trying to discuss a particular problem and come up with a solution. So there's multiple things that can be done in a situation where your partner is limited, so to speak, when he has alexithymia issues, mind blindness, executive function problems, sensory sensitivities, and 3 or 4 other things that we could talk about that make it a real challenge for him to keep a rational head when discussing stressful topics. But the 2 main things that I want you to take away from this video are view one another as business partners, and also when you're having this rather stressful conversation, do it while you have a brisk walk, okay? There's no reason why you can't. Even in the wintertime, you put on your coats, walk around the block or whatever, and have that conversation there. I got a special message to the NT wives today, and that is if you will give up the fight, your autistic spouse will give up the defense. How long have you fought? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? What is the fight? You trying to get him to understand your needs, understand your wants, understand your feelings, understand your perspectives. You have tried and tried and tried until you've tied your brain into a pretzel knot and you're getting nowhere. That's the fight. It's exhausted you. In many cases, the NT wives that I work with are mentally ill and getting physically ill. They've fought themselves to death. Give up the fight. And I really want to impart this word of encouragement. If you will get into acceptance that some of these traits in your autistic husband are not changeable and they're not going anywhere, they will outlive you. Autistic traits will outlive you. You will lose this battle. If you can get into acceptance, and I know it's hard to do, God knows it's hard to do. When you get to acceptance, you will have relief. You will have relief. You will be at peace again. You'll be able to rest again. You'll rest your mind. You'll be able to rest your body. And you will have the thought, I wish I had moved in the direction of acceptance a long time ago. How many years have I wasted? How many brain cells have I burned up? So you give up the fight and he will give up the defense. And now it's a win-win because you're not wasting your valuable time and energy, and his anxiety will come down because some of the pressure is off. So you will get an extra boost of relief in that regard. I promise you, getting to acceptance is tough. Tough work. Most of you won't get there because you're not going to try. Because you don't see the value in it. And you're still holding on to that old paradigm that someday he'll get it. Someday he'll do better. Someday he'll try harder. Someday we'll be happy again. No, that's just you fighting again. Wave the white flag, give up, quit. Stop trying so hard. Stop caring so much. I'm not saying stop loving him or kick him to the curb. You will find relief in acceptance, and it is possible to get there. And when you do, you're going to feel so much better inside and out, and you're going to have the thought, man, I wish I had done this a long time ago. I can finally now be at peace and rest and feel as though I have some sanity back and have myself back. Many of you NT wives have lost a piece of yourself. You forgot who you were. You get to acceptance and you'll find that lady again, I promise.
When the two of you are arguing, the two of you are going at it, and it almost looks like it's an equal battle, who's winning and who's losing? He's winning because as he's over there displaying his anger, that he is fully engaged in anxiety reduction. That was the whole reason he got wound up to begin with. He got anxious, game on. He's over there running his mouth. He is actually in the process of alleviating his anxiety, he's discharging this negative pent-up anxiety. She's over there getting more anxious. So when you are arguing with him and the two of you are going at it, he is discharging negative energy while you're building negative energy. Mm-hmm. You lose. And then you're the one to not forget this the next day, the next week, the next month. You remember shit from 5 years ago. He can't even remember something from yesterday. He will blow up, have his meltdown 5 minutes later. He's fine. You're not. If he blew up in front of you and the kids, the whole family's traumatized for a week, he's perfectly fine. You lose.
The only request I have of my neurodiverse couples out there is please don't fight on the same day. In other words, one of you can fight on Sunday, the other one on Monday, then back and forth like that. So as long as one of you is sane, both of you will be okay. Hey, quick message to autistic husbands that are also workaholics. Might not be a bad idea to set an alarm on your watch so that a couple times a day you can text your wife and say, hey, was thinking of you, looking forward to seeing you later, love you. Hey, are you a neurotypical wife in a relationship with an autistic husband? Do you miss the affection that you used to get from him? Is your name Cassandra? Quick message to people with autism. Instead of engaging in your one little special interest all the time, maybe branch out, okay? Widen your scope. Here's an example. How about learn how to play banjo? Banjo. Quick message to neurotypical wives. Your autistic husband does not speak Vietnamese, nor does he speak emotionese. He only speaks logic-ese. So if you want to get a message across to him, you better appeal to his logic. Okay, so here's one hell of a dilemma for the neurodiverse couple. The neurotypical wife says, well, I have 2 kids and 1 husband, but I really have 3 kids because I'm parenting my husband. And then the autistic husband goes, well, my NT wife is very parental, talks down to me, treats me like a child. So the NT wife feels like she's married to a child. The ASD husband feels like he's married to a parent.
Now, it is possible that she perceives that you don't understand her emotions, which is probably true. But now we're back to this business of she needs to realize that all people with ASD have some alexithymic traits, which is just emotions blindness, and they're not going to understand the other person's feelings. And if she demands that you understand her feelings anyway, she's laid her own trap. You should understand my emotions even though you have a disorder where your emotional intelligence is low. She complains about you don't have any empathy. Where's her empathy now? Quick message to husbands on the autism spectrum. When's the last time you just cuddled with your NT wife? Yeah, snuggled up to her and you just 2 of you just laid there and beside one another. When was the last time? 1942. I want you to realize that when facing our fears, there's this flee or freeze, right? But there's a third option. Not run and hide, not freeze, but forward confrontation. And this looks like, yes, I do feel some trepidation, but I'm going to move forward in the face of adversity. And this is a growth mindset. And it's moving in the direction of having a positive vision for the future. What you're basically saying is, I'm going to lean into friction rather than trying to avoid it or fight with it. I'm just going to run with it. And as it turns out, and here's the big point here, there's this circuit in the brain is linked to the dopamine reward pathway. You actually have a neural pathway in your brain that when you lean into friction, this isn't my opinion, this is backed up by science, okay? When you lean into friction and you make the conscious decision, I'm going to move forward into this painful situation, or in spite of the fact that I really have a lot of trepidation, it triggers the dopamine reward pathway. Dopamine, as you know, is the feel-good chemical. So when we move forward in the face of threat, and obviously we want to do this in healthy, adaptive ways, not only do we trigger some dopamine excretion, we also suppress the activity of the amygdala. And as you know, the amygdala is the little walnut-sized part of your brain that's responsible for fight or flight, and it will excrete adrenaline and cortisol when you're fearful. So you get two benefits by leaning into friction. It opens up the dopamine reward pathway. And at the same time, it suppresses the amygdala, the fear response in your head. So through the physical action of moving, and this is gold to me. I mean, I live by this business of leaning into challenge. Through the physical action of moving forward, there's a signal that's sent to the areas of the brain that control dopamine reward, and those reward centers then trigger the release of dopamine to reward forward effort in the face of stress and threat. So, moral to the story, take some physical action when you're feeling exhausted. Take some forward physical action when you're feeling overwhelmed. It's this business of forward movement action, pushing yourself across that threshold that not only rewards you, but it suppresses activity of the fear response. Now, this isn't, again, my opinion, this is backed by science. This is an ancient hardwired mechanism, not some kind of a new age hack. This is something you could say that Mother Nature installed in us. So as a species, we weren't hardwired to hide or recoil or live in victim mode. We were designed, say by God, the universe, whatever term you want to use, to move forward and conquer. You have some doubt about that, just look at your history book. As far back as there is recorded history, you will see incidents where the humans moved forward and conquered. That's why we're still here today. If we weren't hardwired that way, we wouldn't be here. So we are always shooting for growth. We're always shooting for expansion. We're always shooting for improvement. And you don't have to agree with it. Wouldn't matter, because it's in your DNA. What I just said, it's in your DNA anyway. Whether you agree with it or not doesn't change the fact that it's in there.
Hey, I got a quick message to the neurotypical spouses out there. Don't fight with an autistic person. Don't fight with an autistic person, because you will always lose. Why? Why would I always lose? Because, well, let's assume that you're the NT wife and he's the ASD husband. He can always melt down and blow off steam instantly, or he can shut down and blow off some steam over time. Either way, he wins. Either way, he gets rid of his anxiety, and you're stuck holding the ball. And you need, as an NT wife in this case, you need to talk through the problems. But he's never around to talk about it, because in many cases, you have become his number one source of anxiety. So you can't get your anxiety reduction because you need him to cooperate in order to get that accomplished. He doesn't need you to cooperate with him to get his anxiety relief. Again, he can melt down and blow off steam instantly, or he can shut down and take 2 or 3 hours or 2 or 3 days away from you, and then he's fine again. That's why you're the one that's depressed and resentful and maybe experiencing some physical health problems at this time. Don't fight with an autistic. You will lose. You're arguing, lecturing, threatening, getting angry with. Not working, ladies. It's not working. You're going to have to come up with another method. You get a big, fat, fucking F- on your report card for getting him to change through anger and lecturing and arguing. Doesn't work. It's not working. You will always lose. You will always lose. You got to come up with another method. What method, Mark? I have groups. The link is below this video. Okay? You can continue to do what you do and experience the same result, or you can get some outside assistance. I'm available. I have groups. There's going to be another one starting here in a few weeks where you can attend and get some other strategies. Okay? Right now, you're batting 0%. He's batting 100%. And you're going to get additionally sick mentally and physically. We don't want that. We don't want that. So I'm the teacher, you're the student, and I'll be here whenever you want me. When you're ready, as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I'm here waiting. I'm here waiting. And when you get ready, you let me know, and we'll sign you up. You can fight or you can heal, but you can't do both at the same time. You can fight or you can heal both emotionally and physically, but you cannot do both at the same time. It's just that black and white. There is no gray area. If there's a lot of fighting, no healing. Moderate amounts of fighting, no healing. Just a little bit amount of fighting, no healing. Just thinking about fighting, we're not actually fighting, I'm just thinking about it, no healing. Why? Because any of the above will cause your body to excrete a little bit of cortisol and adrenaline, which keeps you in some version of fight or flight, which means you're now not engaging your parasympathetic nervous system, and you can only heal when your parasympathetic nervous system is engaged. So, fight to one degree or another, or think about fighting, or heal. One of the two, you can't do both. Hey, this is Mark Hutton. Would you like to schedule a one-on-one Zoom call? Okay, it's so simple. Just look under any of my videos in the description area. Click on this Calendar link. Now you see my calendar. Pick your month, your day, anytime that's available. Enter your name and email address. Then you'll get a follow-up email with the Zoom link on the day and time that you picked. And voila, we will talk.